you can't name it. And unless and until you can name your society, you simply can't claim to be a member of one. It's absolutely ludicrous to attempt to do so. And look at some Supreme Court rulings. Read some of them up. They will always make reference to in a free and just society, but they never ever claim that you are actually a member of one or that the plaintiff is a member of one. They always skirt right around that. They never say in this free and just society. And if there was one in existence, they would mention it. But they don't mention it because it doesn't exist. If you are a member of a society, one of the standard things, this is how you define all members of one singular society. It's the name. They can all exactly name their own society. Whether you're in the Notary Public Society of British Columbia, the Law Society of British Columbia, the Association of Professional Engineers. All of these people are members of a specific society. And because we haven't made our own, the Law Society gets to take care of us like we're a bunch of kids. The problem with that is when large corporations are in charge, warfare becomes profitable, and manufactured need becomes merely an acceptable business practice, and men of violence and anger will be employed by men of greed and power, with the ultimate end result being an absurd level of control, rejection of which will prove to be terminal. So here we are. Now, what I'd like you to do is learn to distinguish between the law and the statutes. And although they are similar and certainly related, and the statutes are limited by the law, there's really only 3 ways to break the law, and there's millions of ways to break statutes. And those 3 ways is to harm, damage, or do fraud. So if you live your life in such a fashion where you never do harm, you never do any damage to other people's property without their consent, and you never engage in fraud or mischief in your contracts, then you will be keeping the law. And what it boils down to is love. Because love is the law. And if you simply live your life with love, you will find that you will go through it without doing any of these things quite naturally. Now, if we accept that love is the law and the statutes are bound by the law, yet here's something very funny. What these people do in here, they want you in their society or under their society's control. They will codify the law and they create a body of statutes. Now, some of it they're just making up and they decide for themselves and they pull it essentially out of their hat. However, some of it is in fact merely them codifying what already exists as the law. Now, suppose for a moment I write a book on the rules of hockey. Now, people have been playing hockey for hundreds of years, but I come along and I write a book, Rob's Rules of Hockey, and I see people playing hockey. Can I then claim, hey, you're playing my game because you're following my rules when all I did was codify previously existing rules? No. So what they've done is their body of statutes that they've created, some of it is drawn from the law, and some of it are merely statutes that are applicable within this body, within this house. And in this house, they look at you as a child because you have engaged in actions which were entirely voluntary, which identified you as an ignorant child, essentially, in the eyes of the law. One of the things you'll find, what I noticed when I was deconstructing the acts, one of the words I did not find in any of the acts was the word love. You don't find it in there. Love and compassion and truth were 3 words I looked for and couldn't find them anywhere in there. And then I realized the reason why. They want to keep you in the house because it's quite profitable to them to do so. And so they don't want to mention love, compassion, and truth because then that brings your mind to the love of the law. And when that happens, you simply have very little need for their services at that point. That's why they come at you with their statutes, millions and millions of words, a pile of rules greater than anything that the people in Soviet Russia had to suffer under. And apparently we're all bound by them, and here's where it gets really messed up from the point of view of the law. They claim that these words which govern us, only they can understand it, and we can't, because we're children. So if we want to know what any of these statutes and acts mean, and what they say, we have to go to them and accept their interpretation. Their interpretation will always be that they are in charge of the child, because that way they have the right. What if that child's rich? What if they're actually heir to a fortune? And because they demonstrate that they act like a child, this party gets to treat them like a child and gets to administer their fortune. Do you see why they try to get you to ignore the love and ignore the law in favor of their acts and their statutes? If you do, they get to treat you like a child. All you really have to do is live your life with love, and you will find that it will be very natural for you to do no harm, to do no damage, and to use no fraud or mischief in your contracts. The question then is, are you going to allow these other people who do not accept this to draw you away from the law? Now remember, the law can give rise to a fiction. The fiction cannot give rise to the law. And as a matter of fact, what these fictions seem to want to do is to draw you away from the love and from the law. What if you don't need them to interpret the law anymore? Now, in this lesson, we don't really have an assignment, we have a class project. And that project is, in fact, to serve soup simultaneously. Remember the other lesson where we spoke about human dignity? Try to tie that in. Now, it's going to require the class and those who consider themselves to be taking these lessons to consider themselves a class and to communicate, deliberate, determine, and then act for this goal. How you do it, when you do it, I don't care. Just get her done. What you're going to end up doing is, through this class project, forming a small little mini society for the sole purpose of serving some soup. That's it. What you define as simultaneously, I'd be pretty flexible on that. Provided you could argue, oh, that one party is digesting soup. Because it might be hard to do it simultaneously and serve soup in the morning. So yeah, I could be very flexible on how simultaneous actually is. But it's about serving the soup. I want to see that you have demonstrated an ability to deliberate, determine, and then act for a common goal. Use whatever tools are necessary that you have at your disposal to do that. You got Skype, you got YouTube, you have your accounts. Use them. You might think you're just serving a little bit of soup, but there's actually a reason for me to ask you to operate in this manner, where people across the globe are communicating for the purpose of achieving a common goal, that common goal being serving soup. I actually like soup a lot. I invented a new kind of soup. It's brothless. I call it powder.